This is Nate, and I've mentioned it a couple of times. Sales therapy, the training manual I put together and the trainings that I do, they're not entirely based off just some original crazy thought that I was born with. It's from a lot of experiences. This is an interview with a guy that I've worked with, geez, I don't even know how many times, 70, 80, 90, 100 times. Just fantastic guy, knows his stuff, and he really cares not only about making the sale, but he cares about his customers and the people that work with him. He's an old school guy. He's been doing this a long, long time. I mean, since like the 1980s. He knows his stuff, and ultimately, he's got a lot of great wisdom and knowledge. And I wanted to interview him so you guys can meet somebody that I respect and has a lot of wonderful takeaways and great things to consider. Without further ado, my interview with the great Gonzo.
For you.
I am near perfect. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, you are. You are pretty awesome. You know, I've met a lot of salespeople in my life, and you're one of the people that I've always been impressed by because you've always been able to remain very calm and in control of yourself whenever you're dealing with customers, even high heat situations, or whenever you're managing salespeople. I've noticed that you are able to keep your cool and keep organized and keep everybody in line without making it personal.
Appreciate those kind words. Have a lot of respect for you and your background, and so we're kindred spirits of sorts, I guess.
Well, indeed, you know, it's managing teams, you know, particularly teams on the road, you know, where I've watched you operate, and you know, deal with a group for a couple of days in a row, and then dealing with the people who are with you, you know, the closers as it were, and managing them and getting everybody on the same page. It really is. It's like watching a master at a sometimes it's a three-ring circus if you don't know what you're doing. But for a guy like you, it's really beautiful. It's a ballet, and watching you manage and handle everybody and run everything from the front of a room it's impressive.
It's controlled chaos, Nate. That's what it is.
It sure is.
Controlled chaos.
And you control it pretty well. You know, in fact, I remember one time I watched somebody who a customer who was sitting down, and there must have been maybe 80 or 90 people in the room, and they were kind of starting to get a little bit I wouldn't say disrespectful, but kind of getting to be a little smirky with some of the things you were saying. And I remember watching you, and you got them to calm out, sit down, and take a break. You put everybody back in their position, back in their place, and reminded them of who was in charge. That, to me, was a very impressive moment. I remember watching it and thinking, that was nicely done, because you didn't embarrass them. You didn't blow them out, you know, because it's easy to say, hey, you're a jerk, get out of here. Like, anybody can do that. Right. Anybody can do that. But I watched you calm that situation out, and not only that, I think you actually turned that person into a buyer. So I was pretty impressed.
Those are usually the surprise buyers, right? Those are the people that usually give you the hardest time or the most objections or interrupt you the most. Usually turn out to be your best buyers and your most committed buyers.
Why is that?
Well, my hallucination, my theory, I guess, is, you know, if you're I guess we're talking about being a sales professional, sales master, if you will, or attempting to be the best salesman or woman, salesperson that you can be. I think that you strive to have people to want your product or service for their reasons, not for your reasons, not for the, you know.
That's an interesting nuance.
Well, I mean, listen, you've read your share of sales books and gone through sales trainings. I've read my share. And, you know, back in the day, I guess, you know, which depending on how old you are, back in the day, could be, you know, a course that's filled with features and benefits and usually, you know, trying to get somebody to do something or buy your product or service because, you know, you're trying to convince them. And I think that, you know, to your earlier example, getting somebody to, first of all, understand what it is that they want, and then you're never going to get everybody. but you're going to get them to at least be interested in your product or service if you align yourself with them and get them to realize that they want it for their reasons, not for your reasons.
You're a guy who's very analytical, and one of the things I like about you, and that's something I like about anybody who possesses these qualities, is you're a guy who's all about word tracks and tactics and nuances and making sure that words are laid out the proper way. You're not a hype guy. You're not one of these guys who goes in there, I'm going to just 10x the heck out of everybody, and we're all just going to make a ton of money, and boom. I've never seen you do that. I've always seen you in situations where you're like, hey, here's what we're going to do. Here's the path. Here's the game plan. And and maybe that's an extension of your military career. Tell me about that. Why do you do that, and why don't you get involved in hype?
Well, I mean, I truthfully, motivation will get you started, but it won't get you across the finish line. I think motivation, and don't get me wrong. I mean, a lot of people think, they would say, hey, Mark, you're a pretty motivated guy, or and I also know my background. I worked for and was a partner with a lot of motivational speakers or people that would be considered motivational.
Some
Anthony
very
Robbins.
Big names.
Yeah. Anthony Robbins, Dr. Wayne Dyer, Dr. Deepak Chopra. Worked side by side with those folks. Fortunately, Wayne Dyer is no longer with us, but during his time reading books and whatever, people would consider him inspiring, motivational. So at any rate, the whole point on motivation, Nate, is that motivation will get you excited and maybe started down the path of mastery or getting people to. We like people that are like us or how we want to be or how we would like to be, right? We don't like people that are not like us or not like we want to be. So if you are, if you're a positive person and you see the glass is, half full instead of half empty, and you get up and you're like, hey, what can I get done today? You're probably going to gravitate toward those people that have a similar, line of thinking. That makes sense, right? So I think when you approach what you were talking about in terms of sales or sales philosophy or how you go about it, hype. I mean, especially nowadays, I think just with the advent of the plethora of information available at a fingertip or a smartphone, I mean, it's kind of dangerous, right? Because we're now all self-proclaimed experts, right? Because we can Google it or we can get access to information. But in order to
Instagram account.
Oh, absolutely, right? So it's like, but information and motivation will only take you so far. At the end of the day, you got to get to that transformation, right? It's not information.
It's Tradecraft, right?
Right. It's implementation. It's how do you implement? How do you put it into action? How do you go from transformation or information to transformation? So I think that my approach, you say, is very quantitative and logical and analytical. I look at what do you need to do to make a decision, right? So in most cases, in the world of sales or influence or whatever, since we're talking about that, you got to get a potential prospect, right, or a potential customer. You got to move them from customer or prospect to client/friend/relationship. And let's assume that you have learned or you appreciate the spirit of rapport, right, and getting rapport with someone through whatever your strategy is, whether it's compliment or giving them a gift or giving them a value of your information or content or whatever, you then can start finding out what it is that they're looking for and why they're looking for it. And we're assuming that if you're a good marketer or, salesperson, sales professional, that, you've done a good job qualifying them and identifying that, they're in the market for fill in the blank. Then at that point you can start, because you've established rapport, you can start identifying maybe what it is that they want, and can your product / service / company deliver it? And that's where I think a lot of sales professionals, fall down. To your point about hype, that's where, they go to the hype or the, excitement phase, and maybe come off a little bit too strong. I mean, emotion is great. I mean, emotion creates motion, and I get that. It's just it has to be sincere. It has to be congruent. I mean, one of the things, not that we're trading compliments, but one of the things I noticed about you very early on in our meeting was your sincerity, your desire to really help entrepreneurs and people that were starting in business be successful. And a lot of people knew you through Shark Tank and Damon John and your earlier Mission Belt and blah blah blah. So that kind of gets you some credibility. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that are successful, and you have to have that level of congruency where the inside meets the outside, and you are as advertised, and you do really care. You do have, there's a level of sincerity that you can back up what you're pitching.
One of the things that I find interesting about you, and I know a lot of people who are listening to this to Will, I already know how successful you are. I know your financial situation. You've got finances that would impress just about anybody. But you're a guy. Just answer the question just simply with a yes or no. Are you a guy who knows how to make a 7-digit figure every year as a salesperson?
I do know that through the through many years of not making a 7-figure.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, I do know that. Yes.
Yeah.
I also think, Nate, that from a standpoint of making money, I think that sometimes that just becomes a natural result of what you output. Right? And I think too many times people, they don't appreciate or understand the power of lag time. Right? They don't understand that I got on Shark Tank, and I got to deal with Damon John, but they don't appreciate early on when you were had a bunch of belts in your trunk and were going on the road, selling them one at a time. Right? You put in the effort, the hard work. And that, there were plenty of times when you probably questioned, do I have the right formula? Do I have the right recipe? But you were peddling your cookies, in this case, peddling your belts.
I was scared
right?
to wonder at that point. I was just like, this has got to work. There was no other way. It was not going to work. It just had to work,
That's right. That's right.
That's the way it's got to be for sure. So one of the things, we were talking about a little bit earlier was, the amount of time you spend putting into this work, whatever. I've noticed with you that after you've been in a ballroom or in a classroom for the whole day, doing your job, selling from the front of the room, I've noticed you're a guy who goes to dinner, and I've gone to dinner with your teams. I've sat down with you and your sales staff, and I've sat there, and instead of it just like sitting around shooting the bull about whatever sporting event or whatever deal, I see you there with your notes, and you get out and you go one by one and be like, hey guys, okay, here's where we're at, what's going on? And I've watched you break that down. That's something that's unique to you. Very few people do that. So even in your downtime, we say, hey, work's over, let's make sure that we're all on the same page. And it's very generous of you, because you usually pop I've seen you pop, $1,200-1,300 for dinner for your team on the regular, and watched you pay for everything. And then also, because you've paid for that right, you run your meeting. And you get everyone to talk about where they're at, what's going on, and then you advise everybody one-on-one. And your word tracks, the word tracks that you've offered up, that I've watched you offer to other people, I'll tell you, they're good. They are very, very, very good. Because it's all about feel, and you know how to get in there. And there's a concept that very few people understand in the sales world, even though some people have been selling for 30, 40 years. They don't understand about hooks and tie downs.
Yep.
Can you talk about hooks and tie downs really quick?
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because I'm actually working with a group from Mexico. They're business partners of ours. And, at first I thought it was a cultural thing, but it's not a cultural thing. It's literally across all humankind, right? And that's the power of questions, right? Power of questions. So when you're making a presentation, whether it's in a platform situation from the front of the room or whether it's, and by the way, whether you're delivering a keynote and you're trying to get people, excited about a topic, but move them to maybe contact your company for some further discussion or consultation, or whether you're, selling a product or a service, whether you're doing it one-on-one or whether you're doing it over the phone or whether you're doing it, this is a universal approach. One of the things that I've discovered, I've made it a priority in my mantra, if you will, is the power of the tie-down question and the power of we're going to call setting the hooks, because it's a metaphor that we understand through fishing, right? That if you don't set the hook correctly when you're fishing, you're going to probably leave the boat empty-handed, right? So trying to jerk, no pun intended, trying to jerk your rod, you're probably not going to set the hook, and you're probably going to lose the fish. So. And
explain the concept of a hook and a tie down for us.
Okay, so the hook is so think of the hook as a series of questions that you don't really know what is going to be what the potential prospect or your potential client is going to be attracted to. So it could be that do you have enough freedom spending time with your family, or traveling, or doing what you want when you want, as much as you want, or do you have enough money? Are you getting the right returns? Like the hook is whatever it is that they want that they may not be getting enough of or want more of, if that makes sense. They don't ask enough quality questions. And one of the things that I would definitely highlight that sets me apart and any of my team apart from any other sales organizations out there is asking the quality of your life comes down to the quality and quantity of questions that you ask yourself and your prospects on a consistent basis. And I'll actually say that again because I just impressed myself. The quality and quantity, the quality of your life comes down to the quality and quantity of the questions you ask yourself and your prospects on a consistent basis. So if anybody listening to this, Nate, goes through a script that they're using on the phone or a sales script or sales what you call talking track, right, a narrative that you use with somebody, and all you do, this is simple, is count the number of questions that you ask. I will go on record to say that I would be willing to bet you, all right, 10-1, that you're not asking enough questions and you're not asking enough good quality questions. Questions like, tie-down questions can be anything from, does this make sense? Is this clicking for you? Does that sound like something you might be interested in? To everything from can you start the paperwork now? That's a question. Anything that's a question, but the old tried and true sales methods of alternate choice closes and things like that. I'm not saying that it doesn't work, but it comes off as not being sincere. It comes off as kind of like you practice something. I'm talking about conversational questions that really set you as a sales professional apart because you truly understand and care about this person that's in front of you. They're not just representing a commission or a percentage or a bonus or a perk or a VIG or whatever you're going to get by, hitting the number. When they leave you, they're going to sit there and go, wow, I feel great, and I want to tell my family and friends that they should go see Nate because he's going to take care of them. Not, I can't wait till I get home so I can take a shower because I feel really dirty, right? And I think that, unfortunately, too many sales professionals are looking for the quick fix, right? They're looking for, just tell me the 3 things I got to do in order to increase my sales. And there are some things they can do. And it takes work, and it takes effort, and it takes sincerity, and you can't fake sincerity. It doesn't work. You have to really believe it, and you got to live it. So, early on in my Tony Robbins career, I got hired by a couple car dealerships to come in and do some sales training. And and here again, you'll appreciate this. I don't think I ever shared this with you. I found that when I did my little intro pitch to these car guys, undoubtedly one of them would say, "Have you ever sold cars before?" And I'm like, "No," but that's that's kind of good. I have never sold cars before because
that actually is in a weird way that is good. But I'll tell you, that's one of the big logical fallacies that business people, sales managers everywhere, is they don't realize that sales is sales. Everyone wants to think that their industry is so special.
Right.
Well, you've never sold toothbrushes door to door. It's like, yeah, but I've sold other things door to door. Yeah, but toothbrushes. It's like, no, I'm sorry to burst your bubble.
You're absolutely right, Nate. I mean, I did the same thing with a group that sold timeshares. They go, "You've never sold timeshares before." I go, "That's correct, and lucky for you, I haven't." But I've been on a whole bunch of timeshare presentations, and by the way, I'm a customer. I'm a potential client. So I don't know. Do you want to get better, or do you want to just stay stuck in the fact that because I'm not the number one timeshare salesperson or number one card salesperson, you don't have anything to learn? And I've taken people that have sold cars and timeshares, even though I've never sold them, and I've tripled their sales. And they've, written me glowing testimonials and blah, blah, blah. And I guess my point is to what you're asking is that sales is sales, and sales is relationships, and sales is helping people get what they want for their reasons, not for yours. Right.
I remember there was a big insurance company, not like the hugest you've ever heard of, but they're big. And I make it a point to never drop the names of the people who've hired me, because I don't want them to ever feel like their customers ever find out on my platform or whatever, to find out that, oh, these guys are using Nate Gonsalves sales tactics to get us to buy stuff. So anyway, this insurance company, we're talking to me, whatever, and they said, well, you've never really sold a lot of insurance. I've done auto insurance in Mexico. You haven't done a lot of insurance. And I said, you're right. I haven't sold a ton of insurance, but I don't really sell insurance. I don't sell cars. I don't sell belts. I don't sell land. I don't sell any of that. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I sell commitments. You could have heard a pin up in that room after I was done. I was like, if you like more of those from your customers, let's talk. Otherwise, we can sit here and talk about how I'm not you. Because if I was you, would you even want to hire me? Because you guys are already here. You're presumably working and running this company. Why don't you just do it? I got one more question for you, sir. One more question.
Go ahead.
One more question. Okay. The very, very, very best, most incredible, wonderful sales experience of your entire life. Keep it short, sweet, but just give me the situation where you thought, hey, I never thought this was going to happen. This deal came together, awesome. It doesn't matter if you made a lot of money doing it or not, because I know you're a guy who's made hundreds of thousands of dollars in one single month on commissions. I know who you are. Tell me about that amazing sales story that you've got where you say, this one was all because of Tradecraft. This is all because I said the right thing at the right time. It went from south to north. Things went right.
Well, I mean, so in a nutshell, when you put me on a spot like that,
that's what it's about.
I have to say it and maybe it's just because what we were kind of talking about it, but it had to do with a tradecraft of reciprocity and with questions. And so real quick, a number of years ago, I got hired by a group that was selling, and just to kind of protect their identity, they were selling a very high-end real estate product, which it was a fractional ownership, a timeshare. It was 2 weeks for $56,000. And in this part of the world,
wow,
that was a pretty big ticket.
it's a lot of money no matter where you go.
Right. So 2 weeks for $56,000. That was the top end package. And there were about 25 salespeople on this team. And I had so a couple things that kind of set me apart and that made this experience, kind of a turnaround. So I went to pitch the management that, hey, listen, you should hire me and I can train your salespeople. And of course, the first thing that came out was, well, you've never done fractional vacation ownership. A lot of reasons why I wouldn't be right for them. And so I said, well, I made it easy for them to say yes. I made it totally what I call a risk reversal, right? I basically just said, listen, let me just go in and do a quick assessment for a couple of hours. You're not going to charge me anything. I'm not going to charge you anything. So there's no charge for it, and I'll give you a free assessment. And so they took it. They said, all right, sure, it's free. So I did a free assessment, and I said, all I ask is give me your best salesperson and give me your salesperson that isn't the worst, but is somewhere in the middle. And so basically what I did is I just shut up and I listened a lot, and I actually recorded their presentation. And so long story short, I went out with the best person and I went out with the middle person. And I listened to the tapes. And for the life of me, Nate, the presentations content-wise were pretty much the same. I mean, however, this top salesperson was outselling the other person I listened to like 10 to 1. Like 10 to 1.
Wow.
They were by the way, they were doing $1 million in sales. And the other person was just, struggling along.
$1 million how often?
Every year. Every year, and by the way, and it was a woman, and she'd been doing it for, at that time, like, I don't know, 10, 11 years. So, I mean, she was consistently the number one performer, and it was just like everybody scratched their head. I want to be like so-and-so. I won't even mention her name. I want to be like so-and-so, but blah, 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 blah. And they had all these excuses why. And there were men and women as part of that 25 group and whatever, all shapes and sizes, all different backgrounds, education, et cetera. So I went back to the management group and I said, okay, so I went out with your top person and I went out with your middle person. And the presentations and the way they conduct their tours and the way they do their closing and blah, 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 pretty much the same. And they go, okay, so what do okay, Einstein, what do you got? And I said, well, there's a couple things. I said, without giving you my secret sauce, what it's going to take is about 6 months. It's going to take a 6-month commitment. And I kind of went right into my pitch. I said, it's a 6-month commitment. I said, I don't even need to know what your numbers are right now. I said, I will increase your sales 10%. And they said, well, first of all, that's a pretty ballsy comment, especially you don't even know what our numbers are. I said, well, eventually we get to that point, we ink the contract, we're going to have to, you're going to have to share your numbers. I'm going to have to track them, but I'll increase your sales 10%. They go, if you increase our sales like 3%, this would be a huge win for us. So the fact that you're going to go 3 times what we would consider, success, that makes it, a no-brainer for us. How much is this going to cost? And so I already knew that they were pretty savvy in terms of negotiation. So, and let's just say the number was, it was $250,000. They were going to pay me $250,000. I said, okay, so you're going to pay me $250,000. I said, but here's the way we're going to structure it. If I do not increase your sales in 6 months, that you guys are tracking it, 10%, you pay me nothing. You pay me 0, okay? when I do reach the goal, you're going to pay me $250,000. And essentially, I'm going to work for you for free for 6 months. But here's what I have. Here's the agreement. The agreement is you have to commit to do certain things. So what I did is I hedged my deal with, and I realize some people that are listening to this might say, well, I can't do that in my business or whatever. And to those people, since I don't have the pleasure of doing this live with you, Nate, I would say, I know you can't. What can you do? Instead of focusing on what you can't do, instead of focusing on, well, I sell, I sell rubber hoses, or I sell cars, or I sell this, or I sell that. I sell a tangible versus an intangible. Listen, I know you can't. So the question is, be flexible. What can you do, right? So what I did is I structured a deal where, all the risk was on me. I had to perform. But here's the takeaway. And when I made that deal, I'm being totally transparent, Nate. When I did that deal, I truly did not know. I did not know where I was going to be in 6 months. I didn't know. I didn't have like a secret weapon in my toolbox that I was going to, I knew how to train people. I knew how to get them better, but I didn't know like what the missing link was.
So like at that
right?
time, you didn't even know what the problem was. You just knew you could fix it.
No. So this goes to your point about what, what was the surprise, right? So, I think I might have shared this with you earlier on when we were talking about sales strategy, whatever. And so I'll tell you exactly what I did in a nutshell, in literally 2 minutes or less. What I did over the first 30 days is I went out with all 25 salespeople. I literally taped with a little pocket recorder. I taped all the presentations. I then went at my expense to a court recorder, a transcriber, and I gave them the tape, and I said, I need word for word. I mean, every word. And they listened to the tape, and they killed a lot of trees and printed out pages and pages and pages and pages. And I literally sat there, and I definitely had a caffeine addiction back then. I sat there with coffee, and after the month that I spent, literally, morning, afternoon, evening, couples, families, whatever, going through literally hundreds of presentations, right? I took all of those transcripts, and I went over them, and I got to tell you, for the first probably 7 days of going through this stuff, I had a splitting headache, because for the life of me, I could not identify what was different. And it was like divine intervention, right? It was to the point where after 7 days, Nate, I finally say, what is different? And I kept saying, I keep asking the same question, expecting a different result. And that's insanity, right? So what is different? I said, what is different? What is different is a question. And so I started looking at the script, and I started noticing there was a pattern. And the pattern was, although they were doing the same thing, and they were going on the same tour, and they were hitting the same benefits and features, the way they did it, the way they approached it from a conversation standpoint, the number one salesperson, the superstar, the woman who literally sold millions of dollars, she was asking, on a 90-minute presentation, she was asking 140 questions, 145. The person that was selling, maybe one deal a month, or, it was like one step from probation, was asking maybe 4 questions. Four. They were telling a lot. They were educating. They were doing the same thing. This is the gym. This is the ski lift. This is the water. This is the pool. This is the this. This is the that. And they were telling them, but they weren't asking them like, so is this your first time here? So what do you like so far? So what are you enjoying? So when you do think about, taking a vacation in the future, what's most important to you, and why is that important? And really, so the woman had basically, and by the way, unconsciously competent. She didn't even know what she was doing. She was that good, right? Where it wasn't, she was doing it. All of it was similar, but she came from a place of curiosity, and she came from a place of just, it was question after question after question after question. And it wasn't it wasn't like an interrogation. It was conversational. And what it all did was it got to the point where by the time she got to the point of money, et cetera, like that, it was all hooks and tie downs, right? It was all like, so have you ever, I'm just curious, have you ever, put a pen to paper and figured out exactly how much money you are spending on a vacation? It's funny you mentioned that because a lot of people always ask me, so what would you do? So I'm going to ask you, like, and so everything was a question. And so long story short, I went back after my finding, and during the 4th and 5th month of training, I gave them all a new set of questions to memorize and to use as part of their presentation. And when I tell you that we increased sales not 3%, not 5%, not 10%, but 12.5%, and yes, I did get my $250,000. And the only thing about this little story that needs to be clarified is that they renegotiated the money that they were paying me to get me to take a significant six-figure amount in trade that I could use. So I had some incredible vacations with a lot of my family and friends, but I also got a nice six-figure check. So we all won. But to their own amazement, they said, we didn't think we would ever be paying you anything. We thought you might get our people all pumped up because you're all excitable, but we never really thought that we would agree to this contract. And I had a very good attorney who drew up an iron contract. So the only thing I did negotiate, and it was a good deal for me, is I took, because of the tax implication, instead of taking $250,000 in cash, I took a high figure amount in cash, and I took a nice chunk of vacation trade. So that's my
you're a rich
story.
guy. You've got a house in Greece. I mean,
I wasn't rich back then. I wasn't as rich back then. Let's put it that way.
Right, as rich. So a lot of people listening to this are like, well, who wants a vacation? A guy like Gonzo wants a vacation. A guy who wears, I've seen your wristwatches. I know your lifestyle. It's a whole different deal than most people are even be able to comprehend. So
you are still the best dressed. You are still the best dressed guy I've ever traveled with. By the way, in fact, I think we shared, at least at a certain point in our time together, we definitely went to the same custom suit guy. I know that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. Presentation's really important, and you're a guy who not only can afford it, but actually takes the time to make sure it comes together. You're a guy that one of the reasons I asked you to do this interview is because you're such a good-looking son of a gun. Just kidding. The reason I asked you to do this interview is because you're a guy who I've learned from. You're a person who's never afraid to take time out of his busy day and actually explain to somebody who's truly curious. And I've always been curious. And so, when I've been able to be around you, and I've worked with you 100 times, and right. I'll tell you, every time was interesting. I learned something every time. I'd watch, and you were always. To my credit, I've always been a good student and willing to listen, and I want to learn. But to your credit, the generosity, you've always been willing to teach. And the teachers, boy, who actually know what they're doing, those are few and between. Even I have been impressed with how much time you've been willing to give me over the years, and just talk to me about projects or things that I'm working on, so on and so forth. So you're a very knowledgeable guy. You know your stuff. You know how to make a ton of money in sales. But I tell you, I'd give you a high remarks as a human being. You are truly one of the most kind, well-intentioned, good guys that are out there, and I think it's a testament to what sales can be. So many times sales has this dirty, slick talking, lying, cheating, no good, dirty, double dealing kind of a country song kind of an attitude people have about salespeople. But the reality of it is that you're a very respectable guy. Not only have I trusted you, I continue to trust you. I've watched you. You're an ethical guy, and so that's it's just living proof that you can make a 7-digit income as a salesperson for other people. I know you do a bunch of businesses and do other things. You've made a lot of money doing stuff, but I just know that you're a guy who can go out there and do all that and stay reputable, stay on top of it, and still charge people to pay and make your employers and everybody happy. I know everybody loves you, so I do too. And I want to thank you
for
doing
that. Those kind words. I know it comes from a special place in your heart, and I know you say what you mean and mean what you say, and that means a lot. So I do believe you get what you put out, and I also believe that you're either growing or you're dying. You're either climbing or you're sliding. There's no maintenance. You got to continue to be improving your skill set. And a lot of people ask, when will I retire? And I guess when I die, I'll retire.
I don't know that you ever will. You've got such a creative brain. A lot of times people ask me, they'll say, "Nate, well, people love my sales trainings, my manuals, or even just a moment of teaching." And I'll tell them, I'll say, "I wish I could take credit for all this. I'm just, I'm a composite of all these people. I'm part you. So, people who are hiring me and paying me, they're getting things that I've learned from you. So, you're a good guy, and you sure have put out a lot into the years, and I'm grateful. I probably couldn't repay you for the things you've taught me. You might not even know, but just watching you move across the room, watching you talk to people, watching you work with a team, these are things that, geez, you just can't get anywhere else. So if I'm any good at what I do, it's only because I've been around some truly fabulous people. A couple of horrible people teach you what not to do, right? And then there's some people who are very average, who do one thing really well. But you're one of those guys who literally is just so dang good. Just being around you, it's almost impossible not to get better.
Well, when you're ready to put together the Sales Persuasion 2.0 Master Boot Camp, I'll definitely be an invited VIP. I'll be there.
You'd be more than welcome. People seriously. The reason I want to interview you so badly is because you have so much to offer. And it's just your knowledge. It's a shame that it can't be shared with absolutely everyone. I just think you're awesome. So thanks for taking the time to do this. And
thanks,
I know how important and busy you are, and I appreciate you carving out the time. Good.
All right, brother. Be well.
Talk to
you
later.
Bye.
Thanks for checking out sales legend Mark Gonsalves, also affectionately known as Gonzo the Great to many of us. If you'd like to check out some more videos, go up here in the top left-hand corner and you can see the next one, or you can subscribe if you haven't already up here to the right. Phone number's down below. Give us a call. Sales Therapy. We're here for you.